Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome to Workshop 5. Um, I can't believe we're in week 5, and I know I say in week 4, I can't believe we're in week 4, but this term is just flying, and I hope everyone is feeling good. You're just towards the end of the tunnel, you're close to Christmas, so you will get there. You will get there. Now, I'm just acknowledging that I am on the beautiful Yugambeh country again today, experiencing wild weathers. It was sunny and hot, and then I turned around again in the office and it was black skies. For a hot minute, I thought we were going to lose power here at the university. And then it looks like it's going to be turning sunny again. So it's very, very bizarre, but we are very lucky to be here on this beautiful land. And welcome from wherever you are coming from today. So, Module 5 is all about the teaching and learning in Aboriginal education. And this is where you'll start to see some Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander educational pedagogical frameworks. So, frameworks that are going to assist you in your teaching practice when delivering Aboriginal education and what's going to complement that as you go through your teaching. Now, with our pedagogy, it always changes and it changes as time goes on. So we learn, we take things on, we take things away, depending on what works for us as teachers, because we are all so different. So my good friend Josie Owen, she's the Wellbeing Coordinator at Yallery, and Yallery is a non-for-profit organisation that places Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students into boarding schools, high school. And she's popped this beautiful little visual together, speaking about a cultural or creating a culturally responsive environment. And she's popped three big, or four, five. Oh my goodness. It's only Monday and I can't speak properly. Sorry, she's popped four big components here: respect, connect, listen, and observe. These are the things that we should be doing as teachers to create that culturally responsive environment. But then underneath that, she's popped all these different labels that we should be doing in our classroom. Sharing your story, use storytelling, sit beside your student, incorporating Indigenous games, incorporating Indigenous garden or a bush tucker at your school. Avoid putting the student on the spot is a really good one too. Always get to know your students. Understanding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. Flying the flags, as simple as that is, it's still a start. We have to start somewhere. Using either an Aboriginal liaison officer at your school to assist with you. You can always go to them. They're there to help support you as a teacher as well. One that's really important up in that corner is keep expectations high and call on their behavior. That's how you're also going to develop that respect. Always have high expectations of all students. Now, all of these things that you're seeing, you probably don't even realize you will be doing this if you're already casually teaching now, if you've gone on placement or in your future classroom. You will not realize that you're doing this, but it's good to stop and have those reflective moments to go, yeah, I am doing these things. And as we know, our culturally responsive pedagogy is always a work in progress. We're never going to be the best at it, and we're always going to be continue learning and adding to this little pool here. She's also put together the 8 Ways of Learning by Tyson Young Porter because that is very, very popular. We will be unpacking this in our tutorial this week. But what she's done here is just giving you a different version of how you can look at this. So if this is the first time you're looking at it, it was developed by Tyson Young Porter down in Western Sydney, who developed this for the mob down there, not knowing that this was going to expand so much. And the Department of New South Wales have definitely taken this on board for everyone. But what it is, you've got your story sharing, learning maps, non-verbal, symbols and images, land links, non-linear, deconstruct, reconstruct, and community links. I'm not going to unpack it now, but we will in the tutorial. But on the side here is a different way that you can think about it going anti-clockwise. So tell a story, make a plan, think and do, draw it, take it outside, try a new way, watch first, then do, and share it with others. Now, that's going to look different for all other people. It's probably going to be different to what you do in the classroom. It's probably going to be different to the person next to you in the classroom teaching as well. That's why I hope it's important that last week, if you did do it in the tutorial, you take that. It's a long questionnaire. It's a bit of a quiz. And you take that about yourself and then you link your answers to what the 8 ways are, and you try and get that correlational link to what suits you. When I say using Tyson Young Porter's 8 way of learning authentically means what does these images mean to you and how would you do that in your classroom? You're not doing a copy and paste. I'm going to share a story, so let's all sit in a yarning circle. Tick. No. Authentic to me is what does that mean in your classroom? Are you letting students share their story? Are you adapting assessments that's including sharing stories? Are you using that in your teaching practice? So authentic is how you're going to unpack that in your classroom, and there's no wrong way or right way. So it's a really great guide. So if you haven't done that quiz, I definitely recommend you doing it from last week's tutorial to kind of unpack that more for yourself. Again, Josie's put together, so for the Yallery students, there's about over 500 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students that come together. And they've created these connection cards. It's only for these students. However, I think it would strongly link to all students in all different schools. But they've put together this well-being symbol. And to unpack that, they've broken it down looking at physical, emotional, family and kinship, community, culture, land, and spirit. Now, all of these items are really important to keep at the forefront of your mind and making sure that your student is excelling in all these areas or some of these areas to make sure that their well-being is great. So I always say, if your student's well-being is amazing, it's been looked after, then they're going to academically shine. If they're not at their best or personal best, you're not going to see that follow through within your classroom. So it's really important thinking that your students in that center, what are we doing or what's important for them to connect to their culture? How can we make sure that they're feeling that physical connection? How can we make sure we're supporting their social well-being? So it is, like I say, as a teacher, we're juggling a lot of hats, but these are just different things to think of when it comes to well-being for our students. Another thing as well, so not one size fits all approach. Again, everything that I show has come up over the past 5 weeks in just different ways. So supporting our students' emotional well-being and how do we do that is all of these different links around the student. So at school, it's making sure you as a teacher, the principal, the deputy, the head, who is at that school that can support you as well, because you're also not alone in supporting your students. So definitely reach out to other avenues, Indigenous liaison teachers, learning and support staff. Then you've got your community. Are you also having the community support? Are you going out and connecting with community? Are you engaging with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health services? Cultural resources. Are you trying to connect with family? Again, you see all of this, and that supports that social and emotional well-being of our students. Now, I've popped this link here again in case people are struggling trying to find scholarly literature to back up your reflections, because there is so many out there. Now, this is from the 2-Way Teaching and Learning. I always refer to it because I think it's such a fantastic book. You can also look at it online through Southern Cross University Library. But when we are talking about supporting Indigenous children's identity, they break down why it is so important. So I always talk about having those high expectations of our students. If we have low expectations of our students, you're going to see low academic achievement. So they start to talk about if we are supporting that positive identity, positive culture, we're going to see a greater shift in that social well-being for our students. And then you're also going to see a big success and increase in successful student outcomes, such as attendance, retention, and academic grades for our Indigenous children. By doing this, they've observed through this research that Indigenous identity was supported through making sure that you're working with local Aboriginal communities, ensuring that all of the materials that you are using are culturally safe and are culturally appropriate. So, if you are writing in your reflection about why it's important maintaining and promoting positive identity for Indigenous students, you're going to see success within the classroom through academic grades. And then I would be linking one of these articles here to back up what you're saying because you're not just pulling that statement out of thin air. There is proof. So, definitely make sure you are going through this two-way teaching and learning. Again, um, two-way teaching and learning, they have also given you practical solutions. I know I shouldn't be copying and pasting this book from the library, but I'm trying to give you quick and easy access to where it is, and then you can go deep diving into it as well. But they give you an issue that's happening for Indigenous students' identity and practical solutions that you can do within the classroom. And there's lots of different things that, yes, in your assignment you can speak about, but you can also take this away for when you are out teaching within the classroom. They talk about using incursions and excursions that utilize expertise of elders and their knowledge. Now, when we are doing that, always make sure that you're trying to gift back elders' time for coming in. We just don't take. So always just reach out to your deputy principal or your assistant principal or your Aboriginal liaison teacher to see if you can give a gift back for that time. Reaching out to family members that may want to come in and engage with the students. They also talk about looking at cultural security, looking at what you can do within the local Aboriginal community and using Aboriginal education officers. In New South Wales, each state has an Aboriginal education team that you can reach out to, and they actually come out. This is for the state schools, and they can come out and do professional development with your teachers. So there's things to think about who you can reach out to. Again, they're giving you more practical solutions, looking at incorporating activities using, and it's very similar to Tyson Yunkaporta's 8 Ways of Learning, but looking at music, storytelling, traditional ways. It tells you what you can do for boys, what you can do for non-Indigenous students, looking at dreaming stories, providing those learning experiences, of course, through NAIDOC week. But what else can you do outside of NAIDOC week? And they give you lots of different recommendations. Again, it's not there for you to reinvent the wheel, but this is here to kind of help guide and support you and feel like you're not doing the wrong thing, because I know it can be really daunting. And then again, what can you do within the curricula and then supporting that identity for your students? Now, I actually went down the rabbit hole this afternoon trying to go through my photos previously when I was teaching what I was doing with students. Um, and I was just thinking about when we were doing some art through the whole school, and we were looking at different art mediums for Indigenous dot painting. And this was a few good years ago. So looking back at this now, I'm like, wow, these students are so impressive to see what creativity they come up with. Again, this picture over here with the two little people holding hands, again, that's not dot painting, but they're using their own expression and their own medium. Again, I think this was a year 6 Indigenous girl who put this one together. These two here, I did a bit of research with what was happening within our local area, and there was an Indigenous artwork competition running through the Department of Education. So I got all of our students together and we entered that. So again, it's all these things that you do as a teacher will go outside of your normal teaching hours, unfortunately, but there's lots of different ways that you can create that inclusive environment. Again, certain little things, pulling pieces of pictures apart and putting them on these little puzzles that spelt something. This one was going out into community with our high school students, and we were revealing a big painting that was done by community. Again, this was all outside of my teaching hours. But if you have an amazing school, your school may support you in doing that within your teaching hours. Again, I invited some local people to come in, and this one was all about bike safety for Indigenous children, and they provided free helmets. Again, you don't know what's out there until you really start doing a deep dive, and they do this for free, all of these types of activities. They just want to promote and make sure students' well-being is being looked after. Up the top was the didgeridoo group with our high school boys and our younger primary boys coming together and doing a bit of a boys group, which was really sweet. But there's lots of different things and different ways that you can do this within your classroom. I just got a little bit excited and had to go back down memory lane. So I'm going to show you a video, and I want you to think about these questions, and then we're probably going to unpack it in 2 minutes or a minute discussion. So while you're watching it, I want you to think, what are the biggest challenges Indigenous students face in education? What strategies from the video could help you close the education gap? How can teachers create a culturally safe and inclusive learning environment? And how has this video changed or deepened your understanding of Indigenous education? So I want you to think about these questions whilst I play the video.
Like many of us, Tammy Anderson believes her local public school shaped her life.
Certainly for me, as a girl who I think was influenced the most in my primary setting, that's where the positive experiences happened. It's where I saw people being successful.
30 years on, she's now the principal of her former primary school, preparing young pupils for the rest of their education.
I think that high school can be quite a different time for kids, and knowing who you are before you get there is critical.
You can see that inside of the lily pilly.
About half of the students at the school come from Indigenous families. Putting culture and community in the classroom is a priority.
What I love about these ones,
Tammy Anderson and the teachers believe this sense of belonging is what keeps kids at school.
in traditional times, we use their dreaming stories about making sure that we use their morals about leading our young ones as well.
Yeah, it is very different from when I was here as a child. I think teaching and education has evolved so much in the last 40 years, and one of the biggest things that I've seen is the building in of Aboriginal education.
Not all Australian schools can provide this support to their Indigenous students. The majority of Aboriginal children will be educated in the public school system, but there's very few Indigenous teachers or principals in those classrooms. In some states, they make up less than 1% of the public system's teaching workforce. The recent Closing the Gap report shows that Indigenous students are still trailing behind non-Indigenous children in literacy, numeracy and writing skills. Attendance rates aren't on track either. While the Year 12 attainment target is on track, over the next decade, the government is aiming to close the gap entirely. These kids might help fix that problem in the future. With so many positive role models at their school, not only do they want to complete Year 12, they have their sights set on university.
I want to teach at private public school because I think it's really fun teaching at this school. I know my principal came from this community and is now the leader of our school, and I feel like I can be like her and make a difference in our community.
Government data shows the biggest gaps exist in remote areas.
I used to get frustrated when I would go and see Menindee School perform somewhere and they wasn't up to the standard, because all we did then was keep our kids down.
Fiona Kelly is another proud Aboriginal principal helping her home community. This is her old school. It educates mostly Indigenous kids from kindy to Year 12.
Basically, the whole school's my cousin, and when I'm at school, I treat everyone like my family.
Physically, just so different. It was You know, we only have one building that is remaining here. There wasn't the relationships that we are so focused on now. It was more like the teachers were just there, we were the students. Teachers told you what to do, you did it.
Many generations before us and before the kids in classroom today had very negative experiences in school. Parents, like any other parent, want the very best for their kids, but sometimes they find it hard to interface with a modern day education system.
Mark Rose has been a teacher and advisor on Indigenous education policy for decades.
It's working hand in hand with the community, listening and pivoting to the needs and aspirations. That's where success will be.
After a decade of community engagement at the school, they're reaping the rewards and closing the gap. This is the senior class, and 100% are expected to graduate.
I didn't think I was gonna make it this far, but yeah, here I am. I feel like everyone supports me and everyone wants to see me succeed, and I think that's with all the students.
ORI, which one comes first?
But now there's another challenge ahead for the school. Another part of the government's new strategy is to get 70% of those new graduates into tertiary education.
Oh, so you're at Monday?
Currently, we don't have a lot of kids really interested in that tertiary education, but what we have found is 7 out of the 8 kids have some form of employment.
Tammy Anderson is sure what they're doing at the school will not only lead to more high school graduates, but a new generation of leaders.
My hopes for the children, and particularly Aboriginal students, as we move into the next decade, would be around being able to compete in a mainstream environment, but with your identity, heritage and pride out in the forefront.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
Before I forget, I think there was a certain few comments that were said in there that I think was really powerful. That last one she said about the identity at the forefront. These are things I'd be thinking of when I'm writing these reflections. And the other one was working hand in hand with community. I think that's also a really important statement as well. But let's discuss. Anyone feeling brave, or what are the biggest challenges that Indigenous students face in education? Or you may want to talk about the strategies from the video that could help, where they say close that educational gap, but help with assisting our students. Or how can teachers create that culturally safe and inclusive learning environment?
I'm happy to talk.
Yeah, Genevieve, go.
I mean, a point for potentially a challenge also related to was just a lack of Indigenous teachers with less than 1%. That's a pretty massive statistic. And something that sort of hit me was related with strategies and inclusive culturally safe practices is ensuring there's a sense of belonging, which we all know is a really important foundation for anybody to feel, let alone to expect students to continue to learn and keep showing up, and ensuring we can get attendance happening, which they stated was also a pretty big issue within Indigenous students in education.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you, Genevieve. We used to have, for our attendance for our students, we would have like morning tea and breakfast to get our students coming in and creating that safe space, because a lot of students weren't having brekkie before coming to school. So bringing them in different types of way and having those conversations outside of the classroom and like, hey, Jimmy, how you going? Are you still going out skateboarding? Like all these things to connect instantly starts creating that sense of belonging for your student. It doesn't even have to be your students in the classroom, the students you're going to see out in the playground. I really like what Selena said in the chat too, and that is really interesting. That NAPLAN perhaps looking at having that in either their mother tongue. So that is really interesting. A very good idea. Let's put it forward to Nessa. Understanding their story is important in understanding background, where they're at, and where they want to be. Absolutely. It always comes back down to knowing your students, and sharing your story as well as a teacher and having that strong connection. I've just popped some certain things. So again, in that video, it could be, for this instance, was that remote access, so quality education out there. It is going to depend what type of school you're at. Is it in a private? Is it in a state? Either having that cultural disconnection. Some main schools often ignore Indigenous knowledges and perspectives. That doesn't mean that you can't bring that within your classroom. Lower expectations from teachers leads to disengagement. So always have high expectations for students. If you have high expectations, they feel like they have so much more power and belief in themselves. High expectations, making sure that they have that sense of belonging, that also goes hand in hand as well. Looking at that language barrier and that intergenerational trauma of that whole family, and thinking about your teaching practice as you go. Either solutions or strategies and things that we've always looked at this whole past 5 weeks is that cultural responsive teaching, having that community engagement, embedding Indigenous perspectives. And again, it can be done so authentically, like you're looking at the 8 ways of learning, but you might unpack it in a totally different way. That is very authentic. All the resources that you've done for your assignment is embedding Indigenous perspectives. Doesn't have to be just a standalone unit. And then the role of teachers, so acknowledging each student's cultural identities. Another one to take into account too is pronounce names correctly. That can be so hard, and all you can do is try and ask and practice, and that just shows that you're so authentic about it. Building relationships with communities. Again, when I say inviting elders in, make sure you're giving back to elders for their time. And it always leads back to, I think, our topic in week 2, about challenging biases and assumptions and avoid deficit thinking. And that is to do with you unpacking your own unconscious biases. And there is a bit of a chapter in that 2-way teaching and learning book about your own biases and deficit thinking and how that's going to impact students' identity as well. Now, this is taken from British Columbia, and I've used this quite a lot in some research that I'm doing, but it is the 4 R's. And this talks about how non-Indigenous people can build towards respectful relationships with Indigenous people in community. So this is just another framework that you can think about. So respect, relevance, reciprocity, and responsibility. If you're having these 4 R's and following these 4 R's, it's a framework for you as a teacher to build those relationships and towards a more equitable future. But this is on the University of British Columbia website. Definitely do have a little look around. Something that you can take into your teaching tool belt. So respecting, relevance, is it important? Are you using Indigenous knowledges? Are you recognizing Indigenous and non-Indigenous people to gain a deeper understanding? The importance of belonging. Again, I'm just trying to drop some little scholarly literature for you guys. This one I've linked down the bottom. You can copy and paste that and put that either into Google Scholar, put that into Southern Cross University, and then unpack this article. But it is about the importance of belonging for Indigenous perspectives. And again, this is where you're getting information to back up what you're saying within your reflections. So using that sense of, having a sense of belonging for your students, it creates positive impact on their academic and health outcome. So their health outcome is where we're looking at their well-being. You're going to see stronger indicators of academic success. So these are all these articles that just back up why it's so important to create that belonging. You're going to see in the classroom and outside of the classroom. You're going to see in their academic success and their well-being as well. Having that community engagement. So if you're focusing on cross-cultural knowledge and having local Indigenous community or elders or anyone that is supported from the Department of Education come and help you unpack your programs. There is research out there that shows that then you have established strong relationships with your community, and that you're going to see a better relationship with community and the students in your classroom as well. So this is a really interesting article, a systematic review of what's happened and what findings they have from that. So definitely look into this as well. So the cultural interface, it's one of my favorite things. So this is by Martin Nakata. He's a Torres Strait man and a researcher, and I use this cultural interface quite a lot. So this image is actually taken from Porter, Tyson Porter as well. And he uses Martin Naka's cultural interface to help with his research. So within this image, they try and say, on one end of the boomerang is Indigenous knowledges, and the non-Aboriginal is your Western knowledges or your Western culture. If they work together and you find a common ground and innovation, so that very top bit, you're going to see higher knowledge developed. You're going to see new theories come out. They work hand in hand together to create new knowledge. If you have that big gap between Western ways and Indigenous ways, or Western knowledge and Indigenous knowledges, there's a really big gap and everything tends to fall apart. So it is a really interesting theory that I would definitely recommend digging down into it if you ever have time. And then on the right-hand side is at the cultural interface and how you can develop that within your local pedagogy. So they've given a little example. This is from an 8-way presentation, that if you had an auntie coming to the school to make cakes, don't leave it as some extracurricular fun. Ask her to tell the story of how she learned to make those cakes and how she teaches her own children. Back in the classroom, map out the learning process she told you and work with your students to create systems or protocols from this for mainstream classroom learning. So again, that's your Indigenous knowledges, how you incorporating in that in your teaching practice, because Indigenous knowledges and Western knowledges can really go beautifully together to create something new. Another beautiful theory I always use as well is Martin and Mira Bupa, is the ways of knowing, being, and doing. Again, it's a really great way of thinking, what am I doing within my classroom? So this model here, or this ICE, shows if you are doing the ways of doing, are you looking at the way that Indigenous people do things, the way of life, the ways of being, the laws, the customs, the way we do things, and then the way of knowing down the very bottom, the values, the tastes, the attitudes, and how we share our history. It must take time to get to know individuals from that community and interact with them. So thinking how you dig deeper when you start to create those connections outside in community. Always think about ways of knowing, being, and doing. So as I said, it is from Martin and Mira Bupa, and it speaks about understanding history, culture, and customs and beliefs. But this is a visualization I've been using within my research about how I see knowing, being, and doing, and they all work together. So it's just unpacking Indigenous knowledges of knowing, being, and doing, and how can you incorporate that in your teaching practice? So everything that you are doing when you are embedding Aboriginal perspectives, if you're using story sharing, you're doing this, Aboriginal ways of knowing, being, and doing. It's just that you may not know yet. So it's always reflecting on your teaching practice. What am I doing authentically? How am I putting that into my classroom practice? I've also taken this scholarly literature as well by Charlene. I've worked with her from the University of Newcastle, and she talks about enabling Aboriginal pedagogies and centering and decolonising approaches. Now, within the University of Newcastle, they've got a pathway called UPUG for Indigenous children that did not make it into the university due to if they did not get the results that they needed. So this pathway is being created for Indigenous children as a linking into university. And what they've done is looked at different style pedagogies or your teaching practice within this. However, I think you can take from this and put it in your own classroom practice. So I've done the link down the bottom there, that PDF for you to go and have a little look at, but these are things that you can take into your own teaching. So tying in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students' sense of community and storytelling. All of these are being used for 18-year-old students and up. You can use this within your classroom. It doesn't matter what age. Looking at Aboriginal perspectives, looking at telling stories and also about being listened to in a respectful way. Looking at that culturally safe teaching pedagogy, looking at, if you want, incorporating the 8 ways pedagogy by Tyson Porter, looking at that ways of knowing, being, and doing in worldviews, And then it goes to go on to, which I think is amazing, that instead of having lectures and tutorials, they have interactive workshops like yarning and yarning circles, so students can apply knowledge being learnt and relate that back to their communities, kingship, or Aboriginal law, family, and country. Now, again, this can relate to you within your classroom setting, getting outside of that classroom and working outside on the grass or outside in open area. So you can definitely do that in the same manner. If we were all here on campus, I would love to do that and go outside instead of having to be either online or stuck in the classroom, because I think we can connect stronger to country. Okay, I think this is my last framework that I'm throwing at you guys. This is another one by the Department of Education, and I want to say New South Wales. Again, this is another framework that can support your teaching practice and your culturally responsive practice. They say with these principles, it can be done for early childhood, public school, post-school pathways, community members, families, teachers. It's just a guiding practice. So thinking about, am I looking at responsibility and credibility, empowering change, relationships, place, yarning, all of that is going to help our students and their family. Now, they're all the same things that we keep speaking about, especially in those reflective writing. Place, relationship, power, sense of belonging, all of those, are we supporting them as we go? So our first question, again, this was unpacked last week in our workshop. It does not have to be laid out this way. It's just an idea to make sure that you look at the rubric to unpack and check that you are hitting all of the requirements, because as our markers look at, they are looking straight at this to make sure you're hitting each point. Now, I've taken some examples to show you. So these are 3 examples here about what out of the 6 weeks that they feel that have impacted their understanding. So this first one talks about the acknowledgement of country in Module 1. So you can write it this way: in Module 1, in Module 2, whatever the activity or the reading that you have come across, and then you unpacked your understanding. Again, as we said before, you can use the words I and me because it is a reflective writing piece. Just make sure that you don't lose that academic writing and you go informal, so keeping on track. And what this person down the bottom here is then link that scholarly literature at the end to back up what they're saying. Why was it transformative? The second one here is going through Module 1 and Module 3. They speak about a certain activity that happened within the workshop that highlighted something for them. Example 3 here is they're talking about a certain activity that was done in tutorials, looking at the privilege walk. What did that do to their understanding? And then backing that up. They've used some grey literature, which is your department, so New South Wales Education Standards, to back up what they're saying as well. Our question number 2 is looking at that community engagement and then looking at in your teaching practice. So this example here starts to unpack some grey literature talking about government frameworks and how that's going to support their teaching practice. Again, you can keep bouncing through how they speak about the Queensland Curriculum and Assessment, unpacking that. And then that next paragraph, they go straight into that reflective piece. I have come to understand the critical role. So you can switch like that. It's not informal. It's keeping that academic tone. Then you can see this person's unpacking and relating it to their local area, which is really important. So wherever you are based, I highly suggest you do some research. So this person talks about they live at Palm Beach. They talk about the Gelurgal Centre, how that's impacted their understanding. And then down the bottom, what are they going to do in their future classroom? And they tell me how they're going to implement it. And they're also backing that up with the AAXL standards as well. So it's a bit of a flow. Example of the same question, again, straight away, if I was marking, I can see that this person is telling me that they're on Gubbi Gubbi country. All of a sudden, they've linked it straight to where their local country is. They are speaking about, through this unit, understanding authentic engagement. They're linking it to that grey literature. and then strategies that they would use. For example, in my local area is the First Nation run organization, and they speak about that. So to me as a marker, I can see that this person has done quite a lot of research into what they could use. And again, to me, I'm thinking if you're doing this research now, whenever you do go out teaching, you know that they're there, that these places are there for you to rely on for some support. And then example 3, they speak about successful engagement using that scholarly literature to back it up. Because if you're talking about successful community engagement is imperative for improving outcomes for Indigenous students, and you didn't have an in-text citation, I would go, but how do you know that? Where did you get that knowledge from? You didn't just make that up. So if you're having a statement like that, you need to back it up. So that's why all of that literature I've shown this workshop is going to support backing up your statements. And then they go into what they would do in their own community. And the lucky last question, reflection on the importance of belonging, multiple well-reasoned strategies to fostering that in your classroom, and the impact of that and the outcomes. Again, positive impacts. So the educators can foster a sense of belonging and identity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students through what? And they unpack it looking at, again, the grey literature. So they're talking about the New South Wales Quality Teaching Framework. Then they go into talking about what researcher says. And then down the bottom here, they go, in practice, this means, what are those strategies you are doing in the classroom? So you're telling me what you have seen or what frameworks, and then you're unpacking what you are going to be doing. So this person speaks about acknowledgement of country made in the classroom created by the children. I think that's so important. It doesn't need to be a read-off script. It's just acknowledging where you are. It doesn't have to be you print one out and you go, okay, let's just change certain bits. It's authentic if you and your students come up with one together. They speak about a collaborative project with traditional land ownerships. And then they go further into incorporating yarning circles through classroom practice. So really thinking about what would you as a teacher want in your future classroom. You may have seen something along the way in your teaching practice that you loved that you have done, or you've seen another teacher do. And I would say absolutely include that, because if you want to do that, write it. Example 2 with this question, they speak about, again, what are they going to be doing? I aim to incorporate storytelling, ceremony, community engagement, sharing of cultural knowledge into learning experiences. How would you do that? This person's giving me more information with that reflective writing of where they've observed something. I love that down the bottom here, they also acknowledge the complexity of implementing these elements. And I would, as a marker, look at that and go, oh, that could be quite complex looking at ceremony. What do you mean by that? So you may want to think, if you are incorporating something, could it be a little bit complex? Lots of things to really think about. I love that culturally inclusive practice, culturally inclusive classroom. All right, last assignment. It is due Sunday, the 7th of December, 11:59. Please make sure if you do need an extension, get that through special considerations, because I hate people losing marks, especially if you were close to passing and you end up losing any. So please, please, please make sure you do try and submit on time. I understand it's so hard, life, study, family, work, so it can be quite overwhelming, but please try and reach out if you do need anything. So your 3 questions, you will have your reference list at the end. It doesn't need to be after each question. Just have a full reference list at the end. You can incorporate each heading so we know which one you're writing to. 500-word reflections for each question. Again, if you are a big storyteller, that might be very short for you. So make sure you are incorporating the specific things. I always say, look at the rubric and see if you can really pinpoint the specific things that you need and you don't elaborate too much on something that probably isn't that important. Things to think of when you're writing, please make sure you are submitting it in a Word document and you are also submitting it with that cover page as well, ticking if you have used AI. I know that's such a big thing at the moment, but even if you've just used Grammarly, please tick AI or you've used it and write what you've used. It's there to protect you. When we are talking about that scholarly literature, you need about 3 to 6 references for each question, backing up what you are speaking about. So you can incorporate that grey literature and make sure you're incorporating any of those articles, either A, that I have shown, or that you are super amazing and you've gone off and done some more research yourself. Alrighty, I have gas bagged for the past 45 minutes. Any questions that I can help you guys with? Because I understand second last week we're probably a little bit deflated, feeling a little bit. Oof. How are we feeling? Doing a bit of a temperature check. I see some smiles, which is amazing.
Hi, Madison. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Farah?
I'm good, thank you. Madison, I just wanted to ask you regarding our first reflection. There was something in module, I believe it was module one, and it was a TED talk. Are we able to refer to that?
Yeah, yep. That's any of the activities or readings that you have that if that's worked for you, absolutely you can.
And we reference that at the end?
Yes, yep. So just go through if you don't know how to reference it as a normal YouTube video.
Yep.
Southern Cross University APA 7th Standard. If you Google that, on the side on the left-hand column, it breaks down how you can reference modules, how you can reference anything from the unit, how you can reference any of those videos. So that's really helpful. I might pop that on the Blackboard discussion page for everyone.
Thank you.
You are welcome. Someone said they're overwhelmed. I hope I'm giving you positivity. Well, this is only a little blip of feeling overwhelmed, but you will get there. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but that is quite a normal feeling. So stay with it, stay strong. You guys have got it. If you don't have any questions, please go and relax or do 5 minutes of self-care before maybe you have to jump into the tutorial or have to go feed your family or have to go to work. But please make sure you guys are looking after yourself. It has been a few big weeks. And please reach out if you need anything, add anything to Blackboard discussion if you have any questions. But if not, I will see everyone in our last week or I will see you at my tutorial. Have a fabulous week, everyone.